Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. All right, welcome back to our next episode. What's going on? Let's talk real behavior problems. Sorry, I was trying to read that underneath the mic stand. I was having a problem with that. Hey, before we get started and jump in with Josh, by the way. Josh is here with us today.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
But if you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you want other people to be able to find this podcast in an easier way, consider leaving us a 5-star review. Also share it, things like that. But the 5-star review would go a long way. Helps us get the conversation out there to other people. And for them to be able to find it easier, we'd really appreciate that. So what's going on? Let's talk real behavior problems. What we're going to do today, a little bit different. We have noticed over time that we kind of see stuff on social media or on the World Wide Web of teachers talking about things that happen in behavior. And a lot of times you end up with scenarios or you end up with people making comments about how things were handled in their school or things like that. And a lot of times there's frustration with that. And we had the idea, what if we took some of those and from afar kind of just talked about them? Now, the preliminary disclaimer, right? The three of us are not saying, hey, in this snippet of a small paragraph of somebody's explanation, here's what you did wrong and here's what the right thing would have been, because we have minimal information.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's important to remember. Yeah. We have minimal information, so don't take this episode as this is what you should have done and you were wrong. As opposed to, what we're doing is let's talking through generically this kind of scenario, maybe what we find that are our initial thoughts, maybe myths that we hear within the comments or within what people have said. Maybe helpful approaches that are, again, kind of generic, but that could help in situations that we've read about. But don't hear this as if you send in a situation, we could solve your problem. Because we get that sometimes, right? From people where people try to send us something and they're like, what would you do? And I'm like, well, there's actually 1,000 questions I have now. Sure. And I can't actually...
Can't be like a Dear Annie column.
Yeah, it's not how it works, unfortunately. And so just know that. That's kind of my disclaimer. So... all three of us have kind of picked out a scenario. We haven't read each other's scenarios that we're going to read.
No.
So that's fun.
It's a real organic conversation today.
We're going to find out if we air this episode or not later on. And because we don't have
if you're not hearing this.
Yeah, if you're not hearing this, it's because we chose not to.
We decided not to air it.
So I'm going to kind of kick us off with my scenario.
Yeah, and can we say we asked Josh to join us, one, because we each, one of us have different experience.
Yeah,
Josh is a
roles.
special education coordinator. I'm building principal. Justin is intervention specialist. So we just thought it'd be fun to kind of have a lot of different layers and lenses looking at things, because that's really when behavior happens, that's what needs to happen. There is a team approach, different views and experiences. And so thanks for rejoining us and stealing the spotlight again.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We also did want to note that Josh always uses the good camera.
That's right.
I want that on the episode that Josh uses the good camera for himself.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to jump in. Ready? So this is from a comment section of a Facebook post I saw. I don't remember the actual post, but this was a comment that was in there. It caught my attention. I ended up taking a screenshot of it, thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much a direct quote. Well, how crazy would it be if the person that wrote one of our scenarios is listening?
Yeah.
If so, just
Karma,
know we're on your side, man. We're with you. We're not. Don't feel like it's a negative thing. So this person said, "I was told this week I can't give any consequences. I have to only give positive praise. I was like, they threw sand in the eye of a classmate. I'd like to take 10 minutes off recess. No, you have to give positivity. Okay, I'm positive he's not getting recess. I was written up. Where's my positive reinforcement?" So this is not outrageous kind of comment. We hear comments or we read comments. I'm sure you out there have read comments that are similar-ish to this before. Initial thoughts. What are your guys' initial thoughts? Comment like that.
One, that teacher was written up. School culture and climate's probably really in the tank over that, and they weren't coached or supported through that. She's not bought in now because now she's on a Facebook page complaining about it. So I would say there's one, culture and climate issues. Two, I think we have to look at, yes, there's consequences. What she's referring to is a punitive discipline consequence. I'm going to take this unrelated 10-minute recess thing off, probably for the kid who actually probably needs the recess.
Right.
But then I would say the natural consequences, you're not playing in the sand anymore. Right. You can't handle it. So I want you to sit and watch how other kids are able to handle playing in the sand table And then when you earn some trust back with me, we could try it out again.
Right.
But you're done right now because you can't handle it.
Even like, hey, let's watch and let's have a conversation. We'll sit and watch together as other kids use the sand table, and let's talk about what they're doing,
what we're seeing.
Yeah, like, hey, what are we seeing? Like, look how they're doing it appropriate. Like, what are the things that is anybody throwing any sand in anybody else's eye? Like, has anybody, like, how are they using the sand appropriately?
Yeah, and I would say just from the nature of the content, we're probably talking preschool, kindergarten, first grade. So
seems young.
Very young developmentally, or kids with could be potentially some kids that have some disabilities related to it. So I would say we're looking at kids developmentally that need a lot of support and correction.
It was a high school civics class.
Right. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, the student actually brought their own sand in.
It's actually the stream table from the STEM club, right?
I think it's important to note too, like they're not going to teach anything from taking 10 minutes away, right? And there's something that teachable moment is observing, having a conversation about what we're noticing, and just taking recess away from, we're not going to gain those skills that they need. And as you point out, developmentally, they may not have those yet for many different reasons. So.
When we had James Moffat on one of our previous episodes, I think he said, if that's what you're doing, you're actually doing trauma informed, and you're misinterpreting the intent of do positive reinforcement as of consequences. And I think that probably was somewhat evident in the administration response to this person too, that you can't do anything, we're only doing positive. As much as you want to do a trauma-informed or switch your disciplinary practices, there's some misinformation and misinterpretation of that.
Right.
And then it's leading to teacher pushback.
Yeah.
So.
That was my next question, is like any myths that are wrapped up in this. And that was the one that kind of came up in my mind, is this idea that, like, again, you can only give positive praise, which, like, I don't know what positive praise you give to, like, ultimately get across the point. You shouldn't throw sand in somebody's eye.
Right.
Like, I mean, there also has to be teachable moments.
Sure.
And I think that one of the things that we get a lot is that we read a lot in comments. I'll be interested to see your guys' scenarios, but like, is that idea of like somebody is telling them this is what you can only do this.
Right.
And then sometimes I read various comments, not just this one. I read various comments and I think to myself, well, that's not true. And that would be infuriating if I was a teacher looking for help in some way, which ultimately this person was. They were looking for some kind of help. I don't know how they exactly asked it. I wasn't there, but like they ultimately, the base of it, they were trying to look for help, and really they had something that was responded to. They were responded to with a myth. Yeah. Ultimately, you can only say positive things to kids.
And here's what the coaching point, if I was going to go in and coach somebody through this, like, you're done with the sand table right now. You're showing us you can't handle it. We're going to sit, and tomorrow when that station's open, it's probably a very young classroom, we're going to sit and watch, and then we're going to talk through what you observed, and what we're going to where the positive praise comes through is like, the next day when you go to try it, I'm going to say, you know what? I love the way the sand has been on the table. I love the way you've used the toys appropriately. I love the way you've been able to handle this today. That's where the positive praise comes in. Once we've taught the behavior, we're going to reinforce the positive behavior that we've seen.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's where the misinterpretation was. We missed the whole teaching part, and I don't know what you positively praised. You have a great your pitching hand is a solid, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, we didn't hear the exact comment from the, we weren't there, but it's hard to say exactly what the administrator, I think, is what they said to them either, or how that was interpreted, but very baseline, very much just with what was said here. And Josh, I'm sure you hear stuff similar-ish to not just this, but like you're out and about in various schools and kind of you catch, I'm sure, a lot of scenarios.
Where it is a snippet like that where, and even so, like if I don't know the student, that plays in a lot on how you handle situations. So, understanding if it's a student with special needs, how does that disability affect maybe their social interactions or that receptive language? That will affect how that positive praise comes across. Do we have to use visuals? Is it something that, that's something that we work in a more controlled environment, as you pointed out, learning, watching, and then trying to do and provide that positive praise. So,
yeah. So that's my scenario. I just think it's interesting. Like you guys already covered, that was my other thing, was kind of helpful approaches, but I think you guys covered that as well, or we covered that as well.
Pretty much the dream team. Send us any scenarios.
We'll solve every problem.
Every time.
Persons out there, they are listening somehow, and they're like, you know what? I was like, here's what really happened.
Yeah.
And
One-star review for you. You don't know what you're doing. All right, Katie, what's your scenario? Let's hear your scenario.
Okay, I think we've seen and heard this a lot. Mine says, I have so many kids who are removed for disrupting the class and learning return with snacks or time on the playground. Totally mind-boggling. I also get the adult response they were fine for me. No kidding. They have one-on-one attention, which all kids need and want. There are no peers, which can be triggers. No accountability, such as completing work. Talking with you is avoidance of all the things that trigger the disruption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty common one. Okay, so initial thoughts.
I mean, for this one, I think you really have to look at what the root causes of the behavior. If it's something academically, and one of the things that the teacher pointed out was work completion. Well, if it's something that they don't have those academic skills for, they're going to become frustrated. There's going to be more behaviors. So do we have to take a look at how this student is showing what they know, or what skills that they're working on in the classroom to modify that work? And that can help with some of those behaviors as well.
Yeah. I initially think communication, right? Like we talk about this a lot in various episodes, that the teacher doesn't know. Like the kid shows back up. We've kind of talked about pop in, pop out kind of people, right? So we have somebody that kind of pops in, takes, we're gonna get that going one of these days. Yeah. So, but we have somebody that pops in, takes the kid, does something with them. Right. Like it sounds like teacher's not really sure. Like maybe they are at the playground. They certainly came back with a snack. So maybe, but who knows what was? Yeah. Who knows what actually happened? Maybe they sat down and had a really great conversation. Yeah. But the teacher doesn't seem to know.
No. Right.
And then the student shows back up. Mm-hmm. What we don't get in this scenario is, and I'm assuming it does not go well when the student comes back as well. Like then the student comes back and they do all their work. It doesn't seem like they would be writing this post if that was the case. But so we don't see that necessarily, but it seems like there's frustration. Like then the kid just is coming back, hanging out. But I think communication, right, is such a big deal both ways, right? Like, does the teacher feel freedom to communicate that frustration directly to somebody? I would love to hear what the response was if they did. And then from the whoever has them side, did they communicate, hey, this is what we talked about. This is how we explain things, or this is what we talked through while I had, little Johnny or big Johnny. I don't know what grade this is. Yeah. Like, cause maybe they're,
and it can be a situation. Let's switch roles, right? So if the kid's being sent to the office or being sent to a different room, how about let's try where the administrator or the counselor comes in and takes over the class and the teacher then leaves with the student, and then they can have that interaction and that debriefing on what the behavior was, and then that only builds that relationship, the relational currency, and can help in future times in the classroom. So
yeah, and I would say a caution to all administrators. I've been so guilty of doing this exact thing as someone that came in. Well, and I see this a lot with new teachers in those roles, right? Come in, I'm just take the kid. I'm gonna get them regulated. They're gonna play with some toys in my office. We're gonna get snacks. Yeah, this is great. Well, I just created a Disneyland scenario. Who wouldn't want to escape?
Yeah, I'll be back here tomorrow.
This is great.
See you after lunch.
If you get coffee going, I'll be up here. Yeah. So I would say it goes back to the systems. Yeah. My first initial response if they're disruptive in class, and it seems like a frequent cycle this team is in. We need to collect data. Yeah. We need to talk with the kid and problem solve what those things are. 100% agree with Josh. We look at work accommodations and modifications and what the structure of that classroom learning environment is. Start putting in systems in place so that maybe the kid needs a break. What does that look like? Right. That we are, again, not punishing by rewards or, so that we're not putting the system in place where kids are just basically being bribed out of to do things just to keep the peace. And as somebody that comes in to pop in, sometimes you feel like you're saving the kid and the teacher.
Yeah, it feels good.
It feels good. Like I just
to you as an adult.
Yeah, I built all the relational currency. I did the resilient hard thing with them. But ultimately, you've created a terrible, terrible system. Yeah. And it's taken me probably, honestly, to this year to learn if I step way back and build confidence in systems and coach from afar and don't become, and I have to keep reminding myself, don't become the system.
Right.
Don't take the kid. Let the team handle
Yeah.
it. They'll come ask me when they're at capacity and they need me to step in.
Right.
That is really hard to do. And you're like, I'll just take him and he'll be fine in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I know how to do this because I have experience. And so I caution that to people that are in those roles, like intervention specialists, counselors, school psychs, principals, coordinators, right? That we can't become the system.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you got to think about things. Well, what if I wasn't here that day?
Yeah.
Would they still be able to handle that situation? And if you have a system in place where anyone can step in and take over, but it's consistent for the child, then it's going to work a lot better than you being at central office for a meeting and not being able to be that person.
That's a super good question to consistently ask. I think, especially if you're somebody that's in more of those, like, I don't know how to say, like fringe roles, like you're not like the classroom teacher, like you're somebody else in this scenario. I think that's a great question to consistently ask. Yeah. What would happen? Like, am I creating a system that is going to be a system that works?
Right.
Or am I creating a system that if I'm gone, it's going to be a hot mess?
Right.
Yeah. And to be real honest, the capacity of you're not really doing your job well because you have other jobs, responsibilities that aren't that.
Right.
So then you're dropping the ball on the other things to be like the savior in those situations. And it really is bad for culture and climate. As much as you think it's going to help, it really ends up being detrimental. It's that we have to start looking through that MTSS process. And the most important part is problem solving with the kid. The kid probably could tell you right now why they're having a hard time. Yep. But I would venture to say most people don't look at the kid and say, tell me what's going on. Like, what's hard? Yeah. We skip that whole thing. We come up with this like grand, extensive plan.
They'll talk to other kids if there was like they were involved, but never talk to the student.
Talk to the student and figure out what their lagging skills are.
Yeah.
And then collaborate, problem solve with them.
And why collaborate? You know, they're going to have more buy-in to it. It's going to be part of, hey, this is something that you and I talked about and agreed upon. And, you know, is it going to be perfect every time? No, but you and I have this plan together and they're going to be more bought into it. And I know you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. This is where you end up hearing teachers. It didn't come across in this post necessarily, but this is where you end up hearing teachers say things after a fact or in the hallway or after school, right? Like in an annoyed way. They're like, "Well, I'd love to see them come do it every day." Like that's great. Like it seems like they're real excited about that.
They teach my class,
but like I'd love to see them do this and keep that kid in a good regulated spot while they're also teaching the lesson. And there's 26 other kids in here. You know, like that's where you get those kind of comments. Is because of scenarios kind of like this. I think any like myths, helpful approaches, we kind of talked about all that, but like I think the one myth maybe from the whoever's taking this kid outside is like it's just about regulation. It's crazy important, right? Being regulated is crazy important and really the crux of so many things, but that doesn't excuse boundaries and expectations. And I think that's something that we've talked about, I think, on here with somebody before, one of the guests, but that we've had on. But is that idea that that's what ultimately hurts the moving forward of like kind of trauma-informed care and restorative practices and things like that. That hurts buy-in more than maybe anything is when people it's trying to be implemented in a building in a district and people step back and what they see is really all the person that's preaching this is taking somebody, trying to make the kid happy, and then sending them back. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge missing component there of accountability.
Yep.
If that's all you're doing, that needs to be. But it doesn't mean we don't do the regulation piece and that that's trash. Like that doesn't mean that either. But it does mean that there's more to it than just that.
That's just one piece of it.
And I think that's kind of a common myth, whether people want to say that or not. Like they kind of play into that reality.
Yeah, you have to regulate then reason.
Yeah.
Don't forget to reason.
Yeah. All right, Josh, you're up.
Which grade?
All right. So 6th grade math resource center. So just like a special education classroom. I have a student who's on a behavior plan, and at the end of the day, we have a 20-minute study hall. If he earns enough points, he's able to have a privilege. This works well for him, but now to my problem. Doesn't sound like it works well for him. If he knows his day is ruined when he gets to my class, his attitude is, why try? If he has already earned his privilege, then why try? The scenario is 4 to 5 days out of the week, and I've reached out to the plan maker, maybe a school psych or a special education teacher, and they say it's my problem. I also run class craft for PBIS, which I'm not familiar with rewards as well, but this doesn't motivate him either.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you start because you worked in a system where point systems were a thing. When you came on to our building and we were reforming our behavioral mental health program, one thing we both were committed to actively get rid of the point sheets. Do you want to talk a little bit why we wanted to do that?
Yeah. First, my favorite comment is, I was told it's your problem.
Yeah.
Come on. Really? Like that's what we're saying.
This person feels overly supported.
Yeah. Holy cow. You know what they should have done is they should have thrown sand in that person's eye that said that. That would have been the right move. Like that's, you know what?
Oh yeah, here you go.
That's why I carry around a bag of sand everywhere I go, just in my pocket, just ready to fire in somebody's eye if they make a comment like that.
Dirty fighter.
Dirty fighter. That's right. So the point sheets. Here's the thing. I think that I noticed this in the place I worked before, a separate facility, and I wasn't even the person that like initially got myself to buy into the fact that I didn't think the point sheets were all that helpful. Somebody else that I was good friends with that I respected a lot, who seemed to get good buy-in from his students and stuff like that consistently, always had good relationships with them. He was the one that would frequently bring up that they were, his words, he's a gruff guy, but he'd always be like, they're basically worthless and they cause more problems than what they solve. And so we used to send them home. They had to get signed and brought back. Then kids would lose their minds because they were like, you were in a similar, I'm sure, system. And so what I started thinking was like, well, what is really the purpose of this? And one of the things I say frequently, and when I came on here, it was actually just talking to one of the paraprofessionals that work with me yesterday about, because we also had like a level system attached to it, right? Because you got to have like 12 systems going, and so that all track about and only lead to kids being frustrated because they're not moving up.
Earn your way out, right?
And so it was really what it was. And so we slowly started getting rid of those things, and the question is like, well, how are you going to know how the kid's doing? And I think we do talk about data a lot. Data is important, right? But I think there's also over collection of data that can happen. And what happens is if you have a point sheet, say it's out of 100 points in a day, and you have somebody that's like just watching a kid under a microscope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to watch this kid, and that kind of was inappropriate language. They didn't cuss,
right?
But they did say whatever else,
right.
and it was like in a mean context, and so I am going to mark that. Like, and it goes back to the prevalence-induced concept change, right? Where if problems even start getting better, not that I knew this at the time, I just was going off this guy and was like, this kind of doesn't make sense, but the reality is you're going to start looking for more problems as the problems start dissipating. So now maybe language isn't such a problem, but now I'm going to expand my definition of what bad language was. Maybe following directions isn't really, they're following directions pretty well now, but I'm going to expand my, you know what, they are sitting up on their knees, and I told them to sit on their butt in that chair. And you're like, all right, is this what we're doing? Like, is this really where we're going to land? You start expanding your definition. And so just to continue feeling like you're doing something with this point sheet that's in front of you, and nobody's doing it like maliciously. I don't think. I do think there are times where you like get frustrated and you watch people be like, well, I'm marking your point sheet. And that's also not healthy or good. Right. And then it's like, well, pretty much I'm just telling some kid I'm going to show them.
Threaten them. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other side of it is, in a system like this student, because this is something I would hear a lot. Like, I would hear it on the opposite side. Like, not that I earned, my day's already shot.
Yeah.
I can't make my day now anyway.
Because
to make my day, I had to get 95%, because I've done so well for so long that now if I mess up at all, I can't make my day and get my reward for whatever it is. So it's shot. I might as well not try.
Right.
Why do I even try? I might as well not do anything else.
Yeah.
And so there was a kid even at our place, I just threw out the name, but at our school a few years back, before I was in a room with him, and I remember him saying this exact thing to me. We were sitting somewhere and he had a rough moment, and he goes, oh, my day's already gone. So why should I even try anymore? I might as well do whatever I want. In his mind, he said, and be bad and have fun because it doesn't matter now anyway. And so that's where you start having that conversation, and hopefully you have a good enough relationship with somebody to be like, it's not about like just what do I get out of it?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's completely changes how maybe I look at you.
Right.
If that's the approach you have, it changes probably how you feel about yourself.
Yep.
If that's the approach you have. And that's the mindset you take. And I think that's where ultimately it hinges on something that isn't relational. And I think I've never loved it. And since we've not been doing them, it's not like all of a sudden stuff has tanked, right?
We've actually gone and proved the other way. Our kids are all in tier 1 instruction, which they were not.
Yeah.
So, and doing really well because they have positive mirror neurons around them. Yeah. And that's huge.
Yeah, and not perfect. There's still stuff that comes up, but I can track that. Right? I can track that without a point sheet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess is my point.
Absolutely.
And we put plans in place to support them. I do think like the point sheet just lends people to make marks because they feel like if they don't, they're not doing their job.
Right.
Yeah.
I better mark something, or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. We can't consider this kid can't possibly be successful, right?
Or if you get like there wasn't a mark on the point sheet, sometimes we'd be like, so you're telling me like they were just perfect in that class, and then you're like, well, I mean, they weren't necessarily perfect, but I don't know that they were any worse than the other 24
the peer models
kids
next to
them.
them,
Like they were normal.
And I see that a lot too. Like if you're in an inclusion classroom and a general education classroom, and there'll be a student that may receive special education services, may have a para in there. And there's such a hyper focus that anything that the student do, there's like a prompt or a redirection, not enough time for the student to kind of figure out. But then if you look around the classroom, they're doing exactly what everyone else is doing. Yeah. And there's no redirection or prompt in there.
Don't have secret security.
Yeah.
Secret service.
Watching every move. That would be
like under a microscope. Yeah. That's what I always said. If somebody followed me around all day for every day of the year that I was at work and marked me out of 100, right? Like I would not be rolling around with like, is that why that camera's in my room? Like, is that why? I didn't know. But like I wouldn't be killing it. There'd be days that I would probably get 80 points out of 100 myself at my job. Like it's not helpful. And then my gosh, the amount of pressure I'd be under constantly, as every time I did anything, I'd look back and be like, oh gosh, like they're like looking at me.
That's how I get him to do his job. He's listening here constantly.
It's actually really effective.
Yeah. And then Miss Thornton calls your mom. Yeah. And then that's a whole brings her in, and then they're mad when you go.
It's never great when that has to happen.
I just think that's the point sheet side of things. And I think again, like it sounds like probably this person has a pretty decent relationship with the kid and knows them well, seems to know them well. I think having that conversation of like, hey, we're going to actually phase out this thing. I just don't think it's really what
data would say it's not working.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know that you need it anymore. I think we can still, I'm not saying you're not allowed to do, I forget what the thing is they're allowed to do at the end.
Privilege.
Yeah. So it's not like it's not like you're never going to get to do that again.
Yeah.
But we're just going to change how we decide that.
Right.
Like we're going to not necessarily do it off these points and things like that.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes sense? How am I going to know? How should we know if you get to do that thing?
Yeah.
And I think you build that together and it's...
So they set a goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, again, relational.
And one of the things you're talking about is a student having buy-in to that. But if you read this, the teacher doesn't even have buy-in. Right. They didn't make the plan. Yeah. So having that collaboration,
but
now
we're
both.
problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nancy from the Ivory Tower came down and said, "You're just going to do this. Is my standard intervention plan. I've already have it up for you. This is your problem. Collect the data, and then it's 100% a behavioralist model. Yeah. We're going to have a school site come on that talk through why ABC data actually is very ineffective. We default to that because it's a comfortable data collection point, right? Yeah. But it just tells you, and we'll talk more about it in the episode, but it doesn't tell you why the behavior is happening. And
it'll tell you when.
How many times, some things will frequency,
trigger,
right? That things that we perceive as triggers, which ultimately aren't the kids' triggers. It's our adult perception of it. But it does not allow kids' voice. It doesn't align to any of the neuroscience or student history or input and those kind of things. So that's why it's really important to dive into some of the sensory profile things, look at family history, have kid input. This is where Dr. Rusgreen's and some form of a collaborative problem solving model really helps. And then you can kind of develop a system with the kid. It's the restorative practice idea. We got to do it with them. So we're just doing a bunch of stuff to the kid, and it's on and to the teacher. Yep. And it's blowing up big time. And I feel bad because she probably feels really obligated to follow through on this because her boss in some capacity has told her that this is going to be the magic system that clearly data points say it's not working, and she's frustrated. She's seeking advice now from strangers online.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was Reddit too. It's not like it's a a healthy place like Facebook. Like I'll take any help.
At this point.
At this point.
Who wants
it's not
to
even a
say
teacher group, right? Yeah,
it's just in general.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's hard, right? Because again, we say this a lot. Like teachers just generally tend to want to do well. They want to be rule followers of some sort. They want to make sure the system. And what's really going to happen in this kind of scenario is at some point there will be another meeting, and there will be some increased restriction on the student because the student's not doing well. When in reality, what we've really learned really quickly is like, hey, the system isn't working. A team needs to reconvene and get input from all parties, the student, the people that are working on it, probably family. Let's get some kind of input and come up with, we got to pivot. We can't just if it's not working, let's not keep doing it.
And our goal is always to educate kids, so the kid's dysregulated. We're not even getting to the base of why we're at school, so we really got to adjust to see how we can actually get the education thing happening, because I would imagine a big chunk of their day spending just dysregulated and just coaxing them into even...
Especially if he or she didn't get their points. By
just forget it.
Period.
Why would they do anything?
Yeah.
And that's how you spend your day. How stressful.
Yeah.
That's a bad way to live every day.
Yeah. All right. What do you want people to walk away knowing from this episode?
Yo, me first?
You first.
All right.
Apparently.
I think just looking at different scenarios, and you kind of pointed out even to preface as we went through this exercise, is like no one's wrong, no one's necessarily right, but it's about really understanding each situation and understanding that there are different ways to do things depending on the individuals that are involved. And when we read these scenarios, we don't know the teacher, we don't know the students, but that's a big part of when coming up with plans to support students is understand the people that are involved, what's going to work with them. And it isn't just about the kid, it's also about those systems and about the staff that are supporting and what makes the most sense. But, keeping everything child-centered, thinking about what's going to be best for them and what's really going to improve that behavior. Not just try to force them to stop by using point systems or by suspending kids. So I think that's just, look at different, each situation's going to be different, but making sure that the team, all the stakeholders are involved and having a voice at the table. It's not just the admin, it's not just the classroom para, it's just working collaboratively.
Yeah. Mine would be to really look at the power of doing stuff with people.
Yeah.
We do stuff with people, everybody has a voice and feels supported. And don't underestimate the simplicity sometimes of what behavior can look like. I think we get caught up in doing these really complicated plans or these complicated systems that require a lot of people or a lot of time and effort. At the heart of it, behavior is regulation and relational currency and expectations.
Yeah.
And if you have those 3 things in place, sometimes it's just like, let's write out and fine tune those things. And we don't need, and collect some data, right? There does need to be a data collection point.
Yeah, how do we know it's working?
But sometimes we come up with these complicated things and then people are like, that's not working as supporting. And, so.
And then they kind of give up on the whole thing.
Yeah. And then we're really not helping anybody because we just keep on doing stuff to people because we just want to be like, well, I gave you that. You should figure that out now. I gave you the plan. You didn't.
Sure problem.
It was all there
didn't
for
follow
you.
through on it. Or I'm just going to take the kid. They're fine with me. I don't understand why they're not doing whatever. So I just think don't misinterpret what really at the end of the day the core of what good behavior management looks like, and it's really those 3 components.
Love it.
We really try to get students to buy in to the idea that we're working with them, we're on their side, not just me, not just even my small team, but like all the general education teachers that I'm working with, that hey, Mrs. So-and-so is on your side. Like Mr. So-and-so is on your side, because so many students that have had tough times at school behaviorally, their core belief, whether it's true or not, is that it's me versus the adults. And we've talked about that before, but if that's what kids believe, that it's me versus you, that's a very different interaction you're going to get than me with you. Like we're on the same side. We all want this to go well, and it's a whole different approach. I think that's super important. Again, I think for me, a couple things. If someone's telling you that they can solve your problem adequately from afar, they're probably trying to sell you something. So be cautious of that. That's not what we were trying to do here today. We're just trying to work through some scenarios that we hear frequently or thought were a little bit interesting. And again, I think second, too often what happens is that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So we hear only be positive or try building a relationship, which is infuriating. We didn't have time to get to that, but I think that's one that we hear a lot. Like, this was going on in my room. This was going on in my room. This student did this. I asked for help and I was told, have you tried building a relationship with them? And I'm like, well, that's a good way to fire somebody up, right? Like real quick, because obviously teachers are building relationships with the students in a classroom. There's more to it than that. Or, maybe you can't give consequences. And what we do potentially is dig in our heels and decide subconsciously even maybe that being positive or building a relationship or rethinking consequences is not helpful and not an answer or is bad or is like, that's what we're against. Now, all of a sudden we're versus that instead of like, hey, what is the potential good that comes along with those well-intended, but maybe misguided responses that we sometimes get. And so don't just throw it all out like that. I'd really encourage you, listen to some of the stuff we've done, listen to some of the other people that are out there that are talking about this, that talk about myths of things, that talk about like, yes, but yes. And like, build a relationship, but also you're going to have some boundaries and let's have a meeting. Let's have good communication so that we know what the plan is. Like, we know you're building a relationship, but so don't throw it all away and don't, this is potentially offend some people, but don't try to prove that building a relationship is wrong by then being like, well, see, I didn't give a consequence. Now my whole room's tore up. And you're like, well, I mean, like that actually just put that kid through a terrible situation for you to try to prove a point. Yeah. And don't do that. Don't be that person. I would really encourage you not to be that person.
Yeah. Sound advice.
As always, man, we love having you guys be a part of the conversation. Hopefully this was helpful to hear a little bit of this. Let us know if you felt like it was. Or if you're like, I'm that person, and you know what? Now I hate you. Like, that's okay, too.
These are actually systems I have going right now.
We would love to have a conversation with you about some of those things, too. But no, we appreciate you. If you found this helpful at all, share this out. Maybe this would be even a helpful one that gets listened to for a staff meeting or something like that. If you're out there, you're an administrator, like, hey, let's listen to some real scenarios and talk about, like, have some honest conversation about how we feel about it.
We have done that. Give a scenario. Pause it. Don't let us respond. Have your staff write down what they think the consequence or what the issue with that scenario is. Talk about it as a staff. You're going to find people are going to probably land pretty much on the same page. Powerful exercise to go through. And then you're welcome to listen to maybe how we respond. But powerful staff meeting to go through that exercise with your team.
That'd be a good one. Well, we appreciate it. And hopefully you like it. Hopefully you share it. Give us a little review. And as always, let's go out there and do the work.
Let's go do it.
Hey, everybody, let's keep the conversation going.
Like and subscribe below and keep the comments rolling.